58-54. Oh, what a pass! Oh, boy! Jason Williams, and we'll see you on the nightly highlight shows from coast to coast.
I've never seen anybody with handles like this.
There's not too many guys that I played against when we switch a pick and roll and I want to guard.
Sacramento with numbers. Williams pushing it. Blind pass to Anderson for the reverse.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
In the long, disciplined history of the NBA, the point guard position has always been about order. It is about safety. It is John Stockton making the chest pass. It is Bob Cousy keeping his head up. It is about controlling the chaos. But in 1998, a skinny kid with a buzz cut and baggy shorts arrived from the backwoods of West Virginia, and he didn't want to control the chaos. He wanted to be the chaos. They called him is less than 0.5 is greater than white chocolate. For a dazzling 3-year stretch at the turn of the millennium, Jason Williams was the most intoxicating player on the planet. He played basketball like he was in a video game with the cheat codes turned on. He seduced a generation of fans with a style that was equal parts brilliance and madness. But the establishment hated him. The basketball purists called him a circus act. They said he was all style and no substance. They said he was a turnover machine who cared more about the highlight reel than the scoreboard. They said, you can never win a ring with a point guard who treats the NBA Finals like a streetball tournament.
8 seconds. Terry, high right side, trying to turn the corner. Terry puts it up. Won't go. Way to hold on. And the Miami Heat are champions of the basketball world. Woo! The NBA championship for the first time in franchise history.
But they were wrong. The haters were silenced. But the question remains, was Jason Williams actually a basketball genius who was simply misunderstood? Or was he the greatest con artist in NBA history, a player who tricked us into thinking he was a superstar? To understand the method behind the madness, we have to go back to the source. We have to go to a high school gym in West Virginia, long after midnight, where a legend was being built in the dark.
At guard from Florida, number 55, Jason Williams.
Jason Williams wasn't born with the ball on a string. He engineered it. He grew up in Belle, West Virginia, a tiny town of barely 1,000 people, where football was the state religion. But Jason had a secret advantage that money couldn't buy. His father was a state trooper who worked security on the campus of DuPont High School, and that job came with the ultimate perk, the keys to the gym. While other kids were sleeping or studying or partying, Jason Williams was in that DuPont gym at 2 a.m. He treated ball handling like a physics experiment. He wasn't just running drills, he was torturing himself. He would strap heavy lead weights to his ankles, not to run, but to his wrists, to build forearm strength for passing. He would wear slippery leather winter gloves while dribbling, forcing himself to control the ball with just the nerve endings of his fingertips. He drilled until the basketball became an extension of his own body. By the time he was 4 years old, he could dribble 2 balls at once without looking at them. By the time he was 7, he told his dad he was going to the NBA. It sounded like a joke. It wasn't. But here is the part of the story that sounds like a Hollywood script. When Jason got to DuPont High, he was already a local celebrity, but in his sophomore year, another kid walked into the gym. A freak of nature who stood 6'4", could jump over a Volkswagen, run a 240-yard dash, and catch anything thrown in his zip code. His name was Randy Moss. Yes, that Randy Moss, the future NFL Hall of Famer, and arguably the greatest wide receiver to ever walk the earth. For 2 glorious years, DuPont High School fielded the most terrifyingly athletic duo in the history of American high school sports. It was a mismatch of cosmic proportions. You had Jason Williams, a mad scientist point guard throwing 50-foot alley-oops from half court, and Randy Moss, a super athlete catching them with his forehead at the rim. They were Lob City 20 years before the Clippers. In 1994, during Jason's senior year, they led DuPont to the state championship game. Even though they lost a heartbreaker despite Williams dropping 17 points and 11 assists, the legend was secured. Jason Williams left high school as the only player in school history to reach 1,000 points and 500 assists. He was a West Virginia deity, but the real world was about to hit him hard. Talent was never the issue. Conformity was. Jason followed coach Billy Donovan to Marshall University and then transferred with him to the University of Florida. Donovan was the only coach who understood that you couldn't cage a bird like Jason, you had to let him fly. On the court, he was spectacular. At Florida, he averaged 17.1 points and 6.7 assists per game. He was a one-man fast break. In a game against Duquesne, he set a school record with 17 assists. He led an unranked Florida team to a shocking upset over powerhouse Kentucky at Rupp Arena. But off the court, Jason Williams was a problem. Visual. Newspaper headlines spinning across the screen. Williams suspended, failed drug test, kicked off team. He was a free spirit in a system designed for soldiers. He loved marijuana, and in the strict conservative world of the NCAA in the late 90 seconds, that was a cardinal sin. He failed a drug test. He got suspended. When he returned, he played amazing basketball, and then he failed again. Before March Madness, the Gators had no choice. They kicked their best player off the team permanently. His resume was a disaster. He had missed 2.5 out of his 4 college seasons. He was 6'1", 170 pounds, soaking wet. To NBA general managers, he looked like a liability. He looked like a stoner with a bad attitude who played streetball. In the 1998 NBA draft, scouts were terrified. They saw the talent, but they also saw the baggage. Most teams passed. But the Sacramento Kings, a franchise that had been a graveyard for talent for a decade, decided to gamble everything. They took him with the 7th overall pick. They passed on Paul Pierce. They passed on Dirk Nowitzki. They handed the keys to the kid from West Virginia. And immediately, the NBA changed forever. When Jason Williams arrived in Sacramento, the Kings were the laughingstock of the league. They were boring. They were losers. But almost overnight, the Kings became the greatest show on court. A Kings PR staffer named Stephanie Shepard saw the way this skinny white kid moved the crossovers, the swagger, the audacity, and she dubbed him White Chocolate. It was the perfect nickname. He played with a rhythm and soul that the NBA hadn't seen since Pete Maravich. Visual. The 2000 Rookie Challenge. The elbow pass. We see it in real time, then slow motion, then from a different angle. The 2000 Rookie Challenge. The elbow pass. He faked a behind-the-back pass, hit the ball off his own elbow to change the trajectory, and hit Rafe LaFrentz in stride. It is, arguably, the most creative pass in the history of organized basketball. The crowd gasped. It wasn't just a pass, it was jazz. But it wasn't just one play. The Kings ran the Princeton offense, a system built on cutting, instinct, and passing. It was the perfect ecosystem. You had Vlade Divac and Chris Webber, 2 of the best passing big men ever, and you had Williams pushing the tempo at breakneck speed. Sacramento led the league in scoring. They led the league in pace. They became the coolest team in sports. Kids in the suburbs were wearing arm sleeves and buzzing their hair because of Jason Williams. But there was a catch. There was always a catch with genius. The flashiness came with a price. For every jaw-dropping assist, there was a careless turnover. For every 30-foot three-pointer he made, he missed 2. He shot under 30% from three-point range in his second season. He was inefficient. He was reckless. The Kings were evolving into legitimate title contenders, but they had a Jason Williams problem. In the playoffs, against the Lakers dynasty of Shaq and Kobe, you couldn't afford mistakes. Coach Rick Adelman started benching Williams in the fourth quarters of crucial games. The trust was gone. The Kings had to make a choice. Did they want to be famous, or did they want to be champions? In 2001, they chose winning. They traded White Chocolate to the Memphis Grizzlies for the steady, reliable Mike Bibby. And just like that, the show was over. Most players who get traded from a contender to a bad team fall apart. They fade away. Jason Williams did the opposite. He grew up. In Memphis, he played for Hubie Brown, a 70-year-old coaching legend who demanded absolute military discipline. Everyone thought they would hate each other. Instead, Hubie Brown tamed the wild horse. Williams fundamentally changed his game. He stopped hunting for the highlight reel and started reading the defense. He stopped taking bad shots. In 2003, he averaged a career high in assists, but more importantly, he barely turned the ball over. He was second in the entire NBA in assist-to-turnover ratio. The guy who was once called reckless was now one of the safest hands in the league. He helped lead the Grizzlies to the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. But by 2005, he was at a crossroads. He was 30 years old. He was a solid veteran, but he hadn't won anything. He was fading into obscurity. He needed a miracle, and that miracle lived right next door. It just so happened that Jason Williams' neighbor in Orlando was Shaquille O'Neal. One day, Shaq picked up the phone. He told Jason, "I need a point guard. Come to Miami." Shaq handed the phone to Pat Riley, the godfather of the NBA, and the biggest trade in league history went down. 5 teams, 13 players, and White Chocolate was headed to South Beach. This was the ultimate test. Pat Riley doesn't do flashy. Pat Riley does body fat percentages and defensive rotations. If White Chocolate tried a behind-the-back pass into the 3rd row, Riley would have traded him by halftime. In Miami, Jason Williams completed his transformation. He wasn't the star anymore. He was the facilitator. He started every playoff game for the Heat in 2006. He pushed the tempo when needed, he hit open threes, and he fed Shaq and Dwyane Wade in their spots. In the NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks, the Heat went down 0-2. The season was on the brink. But Williams didn't panic. He didn't revert to streetball. He played steady. In Game 6, the clincher, he played a perfect game. He had 12 points and 5 assists, but more importantly, he controlled the flow of the game. When the confetti fell in 2006, the narrative died. The critics who said he was all style, no substance, had to watch him lift the Larry O'Brien trophy. The stoner from West Virginia, the turnover machine, the showboat, had become an NBA champion. He had proven that you could mature without losing your soul. Jason Williams played a few more years, retired in 2008, came back like Jordan in 2010 to play for the Magic, and finally hung them up for good in 2011. If you look at his basketball reference page, it's underwhelming. He never made an all-star team. He never made an all-NBA team. His career shooting percentages are average. But numbers are for accountants. Basketball is for fans. Jason Williams matters because he represented the pure joy of the game. He was the bridge between the And One mixtapes and the NBA. He proved that you could have the flair, the handle, and the audacity of a streetballer and still mold yourself into a winner. He entered the league as a myth. He left it as a legend. And even today, when you see a kid throw an elbow pass on a playground or a guard pull up from 30 feet on a fast break, you're watching the ghost of White Chocolate.